Hi there, I'm back with another review, and this time is for Kill Switch by Neal Baer and Jonathan Greene. Now, in the beginning of this book, we're introduced to Dr. Claire Waters. She's a forensic psychiatrist, and she is being mentored by one of the top forensic psychiatrists in the country. Dr. Curtin is well known and well respected. Now, she's assigned to see an inmate in Rikers Island. His name is Todd Quimby. He'd been there for years for multiple murders that he had committed, but it seemed that he was much younger when he started or when these murders has happened. So she's supposed to um, pretty much complete an assessment and make a recommendation as to whether he should be paroled. So ultimately, he ended up getting out, but shortly after he got out, he had called her frantic and wanted to talk to her. There's an incident with a lady in the based on what the lady, had said to her, it really had him feeling away. She was demeaning and saying things that were triggering to him. So after she met with him, she went home and coincidentally, she had put the news on and discovered that there was a lady who was killed and bared a lot of similarities to the person that Quimby had mentioned, but of course, Quimby didn't mention there was a murder. So she suspected that he had killed her and just didn't tell her. So she had let the authorities know about that. She was supposed to meet with him the following day, I believe. And so she decided to, her strategy was to make herself look like the victims and maybe trigger him to and get him to talk or confess or something like that. So she cut her hair, colored it blonde, and so she decided to show up. Now, when he saw her, he kind of flipped out and attacked her, and so she had to run out the room, try to go get help. But when she got back with the police, he was gone. So he was on the run and suspected new murders now. Now, as we proceed through the book, there were other murders that had happened. So now we have a manhunt for him because now he's out killing people. So one of the girls, and this is another angle of the book, one of the girls that were killed when they completed the autopsy, they found that her body was riddled with cancer, and there's just no way. How is it that she's out and about clubbing and stuff like that when anybody whose body was ravaged with cancer, and especially to the extent that they had found, wouldn't have been able to barely move out of bed. So this is another angle of the story. So we'll set that aside for now. So after this whole debacle with Quimby, uh, her mentor decided that she really needed to take some time off. She was all shaken up about what happened with Quimby, not just the murders that had happened, but also with the assault, the incident there. So she also teams up with detective Nick Lawler. He was the primary detective on the case, and so he sought her assistance as far as being able to talk about his state of mind and help him as far as psychiatry and what questions to ask about certain things to help him with following up and determining what next steps and questions that he might have had. So while she was off from work, she decided to once and for all, she wanted to figure out what happened to her friend because when she was younger, around 8 or so, her best friend and her were playing outside, and a man came up stating that his name was Winslow, and that was a friend of her friend Amy's dad, and he had sent to get her. Now, Claire was asking, questions like, how did he know she was here? Blah blah blah. The guy hurried up and gave answers and took off with Amy, and she was never seen again. So this is something that she had been living with for years because this has happened when she was around 8, and now she was in her 30s. So she decided, well, she needed some closure. So working with Nick, she was able to get access to, the interviews and all the investigate notes from the investigation from when she was a child, and so followed a couple threads and in order to determine what had happened. So that led her to discover who the guy was that took Amy. As a result, they had found his son, and he was cooperative in willing to help them get information. And we find out the guy that had taken Amy was still alive and in prison. So she did get some degree of closure from that perspective. Now, also as far as Amy, her I'm sorry, not Amy, Tamara, the Tamara Sorensen, the lady who had the cancers, they had interviewed the parents who had said she was in Hawaii, but of course she wasn't. And it was really crazy because she had been approved for life insurance, and there's no mention of the cancers, which was another thing in itself that led her to look further into it. And so she uncovered a whole cover up and conspiracy because Tamara had worked for a pharmaceutical company, and they were doing unethical illegal research. And so as a result of that, we find out that that's how she ended up being ravaged with cancer, and the means of that was via the research that was being committed. We also find out towards the end of the book that her mentor, Dr. Curtin, was somehow tied up in this cover up as well, and he had known a lot about her past as well, and was also involved in the trial for Winslow, the guy who took Amy when she was younger. Of course, that wasn't his real name, but he was in jail for murders of some other girls, but he was never tied to the abduction of her friend Amy. So that was another thing that we found out. Also, finally, in the end of the book, how we discover that all is not what it seemed as far as the murders that were committed. I'm going to try not to tell how that is, but we find out that the murders were really more complicated and orchestrated than it seemed in the book. So ultimately, I definitely enjoyed this one. Lots of twists and turns, which is good. This is what a mystery is supposed to be. This is what a thriller is supposed to be. And definitely a good solid four in this book. If you have read or listened to this book, let me know your thoughts. Like, comment, subscribe. Until next time.